Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to puff him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
The confidence.
Hey guys, Joe Mazzulla at the podium. We're going to jump in here, and I got Bobby Manning. Celtics lose to the Cavaliers. Let's hear it for Joe real quick.
Out there, switch to a 2-3 zone defense-ish. Were you expecting that?
Yes, yeah, they did some of that in the first half, and they've played that in game 1 at home and then game 3 at Cleveland.
You were expecting that, and is that like a game adapted for a zone defense, or you just keep going with your usual offensive flow?
A little bit of both. It depends on if you're playing off a make or a miss, but a little bit of both.
Joe, you had big scoring numbers, 38 and 36 in the first 2 quarters, and then it dropped to 24 and 18. What did you see that led to the drop-off in offense, besides just missing some shots?
Yeah, we missed some shots. Obviously, the game slowed down a little bit. We didn't get out in transition as much in the second half. They did a better job of not over-helping, and giving us some 2-on-1s, and then I thought we missed them there. So, just a little bit adjusting by them, and I think just us missing some shots at that end.
And you seem to go with a shorter rotation than usual. Obviously, 2 guys are out, so you're a little bit more limited. But what made you like Torrey didn't play? Like what went into some of that decision making?
We had 2 guys out, and I thought the lineups, they present different challenges on both ends of the floor. We constantly try to have lineups that kind of challenge what they do well at all times.
Joe, is it a game that you study to, obviously this could be a playoff team that you would face again, or do you have to put it aside a little bit because of who you were missing tonight in your lineup and missed down 2 starters?
No, there's definitely stuff you can take from that. I think every game we've played, someone has been out on either team. KP was out in game 1. In game 2, JB and Derek were out. In game 3, we may have had everybody, but they were missing Wade and someone, and then tonight have theirs. So every game gives you a little bit of what they're able to do, and you can take stuff from each game.
So how do you get more out of the guys besides Jayson and Jaylen? They were a big majority of your offense tonight. How do you kind of spread the wealth so maybe, you're a little maybe less predictable offensively?
I think it's just about making the right play regardless of what that is. I thought both of those guys' shot selection were tremendous at times, and I don't think it's about predictability. It's about just making the right play, whatever that may be. And so obviously not always perfect, but, I thought for the most part we got the shots that we were looking to get on every possession and trying to exploit some of the stuff that they do.
And what do they do defensively to limit you from the 3-point line?
They went to a little bit more switching, and they were obviously a little bit more intentional about their shifts and their activity.
Joe, obviously you guys jump out to that big lead early on. Everybody knows that they're going to come back to an extent. It's, a great team on the other end. Is there a challenge in that, being in that position? Like, I'm sure the crowd's going crazy, but are you thinking like this is actually a pretty tough spot to be in because you know that the Cavs are going to respond? And how do you kind of mitigate the fact that that run is kind of inevitable and that it's going to probably be a close game, but having the momentum?
You try to manage those runs with not having live ball turnovers, not giving up offensive rebounds, not getting to the free throw line, not giving up game plan things. And so, in the first half, we gave up a couple offensive rebounds that they were able to score on, gave up some tendency points to some of their guys. But at the same time, they're going to make some form of a run, but you just have to continue to work the margins and, continue to play efficient on both ends of the floor. Thank you.
There it is, Joe Mazzulla talking after the Celtics lose. A really fun, entertaining game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I know, Bobby, a lot of people here in the chat want to rage. People want to rage. People who I know who watch the show texting me saying, I can't wait to hear you rage. I don't have a lot to rage about here, Bobby, in this particular game, but I'll get your take first here in terms of what you saw. And again, it was bad losing that kind of lead. You knew the run was coming. You knew it was going to be a close game. But again, I hate to make the excuses. You're down 2 starters, and ultimately you didn't have the horses to keep up. This is where it goes, right? Cleveland runs 10 deep. You were texting it. They're rotating players in and out all night. They're rotating in their wings. They're doing what they can. And the Celtics guys were playing out of their depth tonight, and the bench was brutal. And, the fill-in starters, Hauser wasn't very good either. It was just simply a matter of just Cleveland had more better players out there on the floor for most of the night.
Yeah, what have we talked about this year? And even this week, your uncertain depth at the back end of the rotation there, the greater competition around the league. And that's the headline of this game, right? The Cavs are for real. And say what you want about what the Celtics are missing here, or, who's available on both sides. All that's a factor, and if and when this matchup comes. But regardless what the Celtics had and what they did, the Cavs brought it in this game. And to come back from down 25-3, that's the real story here, is that you had that commanding lead early. You had a chance to put the game out of reach. And, Noah's question, you heard it in there, is true. You know a team's going to come back when you go up that big, that early. But like Joe said right there, you have to mitigate that. And it happened so fast, John. They got down from 22-11 like this. And then it was down to 3 in short order after that. And then, it's back and forth for the rest of the night after that. So blowing that so quickly put them in a tough spot. Of course, it was the rotations, and then you're tightening up after that. So those two things, this Cavs team, they're legit. You have to take them seriously. Are they in position to beat the Celtics? I think what this game showed you, John, is it depends who's there. If the Celtics are missing a guy or two in May, Cavs might have the edge. If the Cavs are missing a guy or two in May, Celtics almost certainly have the edge at this point. And of course, the guy who's missing here, who you miss especially, is Porzingis. And that's another thing we've talked about this year, John, is that they need Porzingis this time around. You didn't get enough from Horford in this game. Luke was not good enough in this game, and you couldn't go to Cada. So that's what I got on this one. Noah's standing by. I'm going to go grab some locker room sound here. But we'll rotate in and out for the rest of the night here, John.
Okay, we're a little short-handed. Jimmy's gigging, and Sherrod is going to be is MIA at the moment. But I am going to get Noah in here for a little bit and talk, and we'll talk to you guys in the chat. And we do thank you guys for hanging out here and joining us. And again, yeah, I know Horford, Bobby mentioned, not a great game there. They were undermanned. They're undermanned. I know people, like I said, I know people want the rage. I'm struggling to bring it. I'm struggling to bring rage with this tonight. In fact, most of the night I felt like it was just a wildly entertaining game against two quality basketball teams. I think the Celtics they just didn't have the horses to compete all the way through there. And you could see it in that third quarter there. And you knew Tatum sitting there to start that fourth, those were going to be critical minutes. And they were struggling the whole time. And the bench, again, we'll put up some of the numbers here, but some really, really, really grisly stuff. Peyton Pritchard for 6 points in 25 minutes. He was a minus 34 in this game. Yikes. And again, plus minus doesn't tell the entire tale, but just goes to show you Luke Cornett, again, 0 points, 5 rebounds, 19 minutes, minus 26 on the night. Sam Hauser, who started, 6 points, 2 of 8 field goals. Those came early. And that was it there. And really more the issue there with Hauser defensively, it looked like he was, struggling for sure. And people are saying in the chat, well, and again, as we wait for Noah to get ready, Noah, give me a thumbs up when you're good to go here. You waste a Jayson Tatum game. And yeah, he enters the fourth quarter at 40 points, 2 assists shy of a triple-double, already in double-digit rebounds. A 50-point triple-double was on the table. And this is I'm not going into bright spots already, but you should a little. I feel weird that I'm the guy that's doing this for everyone. This is a feel good about the Celtics, not feel bad about the Celtics game for a couple times. It's the first 30-30 of Tatum and Brown all year. That's kind of a thing. That's kind of important. I don't like the one-on, one-off that they've been doing throughout here. And it's nice to see them both be able to go off here. And they had to go off in order to have any shot to compete in this game, because the Cavs were playing really well. Short of that really hot start, they were good, and they were making shots, and playmakers were making plays. Mitchell, man, I mean, you've seen it enough by this point. This guy, with a team like this in the playoffs, single-handedly can erase 10 and 12 and 14-point leads in the fourth quarter. Nothing's safe. It's a really good team. It's really deep, and I agree with Bobby there. But again, I can't remember being this excited watching Jayson Tatum play basketball in a long time. I really can't. And it's not just the stat line, which is amazing. And yes, one of those nights where he feels it and he has it going. It was the attitude. He was mad as hell. This was one night where when he was complaining for calls, he wasn't getting them and he deserved them. And it made him, instead of doing the thing he does, which is sulk and pout and take a tee and not play defense, he was getting madder and madder about it. He's like, all right, F you. I'm just going to go. I'm just taking it myself, and I'm just going to make this happen, okay? And he did it all friggin' game. He did it all game long, and he was great. And so, again, I don't know. I don't know. He got somebody saying here in the chat he got humbled. If you know that this version of Jayson Tatum exists and can come up and show out in a game like this against this team, and you're fully healthy, you have to feel really good about yourself. Not. What would have been terrible is if everyone else played okay, Tatum has a meh game, and then you watch Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland make individual plays and take the game from you. And yeah, I didn't love some of it, and it got a little forcey late, and it had to, because there really wasn't a lot of offense coming from a lot of other places. So yes, shot selection, trying to force the issue a little bit in the fourth quarter. I understand that happened. Brown, same thing, some really high degree of difficulty on some of his fourth quarter shots, but those guys knew that they were in the entire ball game tonight, and they kind of were. There wasn't a lot of help outside of Derek White knocking down a few threes there that they were going to get offensively. They had to carry it, and it's nice to see that they were able to do it. So again, I'm not mad. I'm guessing Noah's not mad. Hi, Noah. Thumbs up to you. That's how
I was
we
trying
say.
to get this TV out of my screen, and no matter how much of the side I go, I feel like I
That's how Noah and I say hello to each other. We just
yeah.
what's going on? What's going on, buddy? So Noah, I'm not mad. Are you mad? Is this a blown?
No,
Put it this way. Let's ask this question instead of mad. Is this a blown Celtics game or a great win for the Cavs?
It's a great win for the Cavs, that's for sure. That's like the win of the year, because to be able to come back after not just the 22-point deficit in the first, but then also 17-point deficit midway through the third, and just they never lost sight of it, and they never seemed frazzled, and I was impressed. That being said, this was almost the win of the year, and they didn't get it done, and that's frustrating. And so there's a part of me that's like, you kind of go back to what happened in the fourth quarter, and it feels like it could have definitely gone another direction. And now we're sitting here praising the fact that we just watched I think the highest scoring Tatum and Brown game combined ever, right?
I don't know. You're the reporter.
So I saw that on Twitter. I don't want to in case it was Sentinel, but it did feel that way.
It was amazing. It's nice to see that. And this was the first 30-30 of the year, huh?
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
I didn't either until it happened. And someone, I was like, really? And it had happened by the third quarter, which was insane, or early fourth or whatever.
And honestly, as it was happening, I was thinking to myself, I feel like they've kind of taken turns playing well this season. Yeah. And this was one of those games where they were both playing well and just nobody else had it going. That being said, this is going to be my one take about this game. This team is better when it's not the Tatum and Brown show. Tonight it had to be, because they weren't Porzingis and Jrue, and other guys just didn't have it going. I think they took good shots. I agree with Joe on that. They were tough shots, but they were good shots. But that's not this team at their best. I don't want to see that all the time. And I know a lot of Tatum fans and Brown fans individually enjoy when their favorite players go off, but this team is better when all five starters and this was going to be tough to recreate it. And I felt like Jrue's presence was missing a lot defensively. A lot of those Sam Hauser ISOs, I was like, he shouldn't even be on the floor. No offense to Sam, but he wouldn't have been there in that moment. It would have been Jrue. But at the same time, just frustrating, because it was such a generational Tatum game.
It got ISO heavy, and you're right. I mean, 50-point triple double was on the table entering the fourth quarter for Tatum. He was already at 40 40-10-8 or 40-12-8. So I mean, a ridiculous game. Yeah, look, it ran out. They got ISO heavy. They took some really difficult shots in the fourth quarter. The ball stopped moving. They were trying to get their matchups and just trying to force the issue because those guys realized they were really the only offense they had going. White didn't have a very good second half either. So you just didn't have complementary scoring, and the bench was really, really, really ineffective. And again, we alluded to it briefly, Noah, the other day, that this is the Cavs are, in addition to having firepower and having legit stars, and Donovan Mitchell, as I said earlier, he can single-handedly erase 10 and 12-point fourth quarter leads in minutes when he heats up. I mean, he's that guy. We've seen it before, but they just run 10 deep, and that's going to be an issue when you're down 2 guys. You don't. I mean, you can roll 9 guys out there, but in a playoff series versus the Cavs, you're talking about 5 guys playing close to 40 minutes in that game, and that's how you're going to play it. Even if they are rotating in and doing their thing with their wings and playing Okoro and Hunter and whatever have you there, and they're throwing some bodies at Tatum and Brown, which is I assume what they're going to do. That's going to be the edge. So when you go down 2 guys and they throw that many bodies at you, that's going to be a problem. And it ended up being a problem, and you could see it. Celtics were hanging on, but it just became a war of attrition by the end. And you could tell that they couldn't go any farther than Tatum and Brown had taken them through the 3 quarters there. And I wasn't surprised by it. I didn't see it and think, oh, they're, that being said, it was still there. I mean, these are small plays, Noah. Are you okay? Yeah. Are you being moved?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Small little plays here. Like, you still have a chance there. Brown goes to the basket, misses a lefty, misses a difficult take with the left hand. Mitchell does the same thing, hits a really difficult shot with his left hand and gets fouled. I think a trip later or 2 trips later, Tatum with a really bad offensive foul on a screen where he's really getting shovey there, trying to spring Derek White. And then, Cleveland goes back and scores, and a tie game or a 1-point game turns into a 6 or 7-point game with a couple minutes to go. So, they weren't great down the stretch either. They didn't execute, and they weren't taking great shots. So you can nitpick some of it, because everything that we said is true, but they were still in a position to win the game. Just Cleveland made more plays than they did to close.
Yeah, they definitely made more plays. And I think you go back and definitely would have liked to see Tatum more involved down the stretch, just considering the kind of game that he was having. I think it was tough. Just everybody else was kind of a little bit iced out. And again, it's not, I don't blame Tatum or Brown for that, but by a certain point in the fourth quarter, like, nobody else had really had the ball or had any sort of rhythm. And so it was kind of going to continue to have to be those 2 guys. And Jaylen had a couple of tough plays there. And the whole time I was sitting there thinking, this is going to be an epic playoff series. This is almost inevitably the conference finals. But that's how I felt watching this game. Is it just felt kind of inevitable that these 2 teams are going to face off. And it was more of a chess match than most of these regular season games. I think both coaches were kind of putting it all out there, between even just taking Mobley out with like 4 minutes to go. I was stunned to see that, because he had been such an impactful player in the fourth quarter, but they were just really trying to account for every little thing rather than just kind of leave the group out that was out there. And so I thought Joe was pretty frustrated post game. I don't know what your interpretation was. That's the Joe that is just not having it. He's just trying to get through the post game presser without saying anything. And it's a painful loss. You could see how quickly the guys got off the floor and everything, but it doesn't leave you discouraged about this team moving forward. And a big part of it is that I think this is still a really good matchup for Tatum and Brown. And that was the big story, right? They got DeAndre Hunter. I didn't think much about DeAndre Hunter tonight. That wasn't really on my mind watching these 2 teams play. So yeah, that part didn't stand out to me. It's more, you need more from the rest of your team. And tonight you were in a tough position.
Hunter did pretty well. I mean, they played him a lot. He played starter minutes pretty much. He played 28 minutes in this game, and he knocked down all of his threes, and that's what you got him for. And then again, to throw some bodies at Tatum and Brown. So mission accomplished as far as that's concerned for Cleveland. They have to feel pretty good about themselves. Season series now goes to 2 apiece for these 2 teams. And yeah, no, it does feel inevitable. And also, I don't think watching this game makes you feel any worse about the Celtics' chances should they face each other, assuming full health for both teams entering the postseason. this does feel like the not just likely, I mean, it's just extremely likely conference final. Cleveland can absolutely win. They can absolutely win a series. I'm still fully healthy. I'm still putting my money on the Celtics in a 7-game series against Cleveland. But they can play, man. This is not a fluke, and it's exciting. I mean, I don't know if people want easy rides. This is fun. It's fun to have another heavyweight in there. It's fun to have a team that you really want to beat. It's fun to have a team that's a challenge or you might be developing a rivalry with. So I like that. Cleveland's real. And I think that they're probably going to see them as the season progresses. We're going to hear more from as you get into the playoffs, obviously the rest of the regular season is done here. We are going to hear from a lot of other people here. Did I lose my prize picks? No. In a little bit, Bobby's in the locker room. We're going to hear from the Cavs as well. But first off, we want to tell you about our sponsor here at the Garden Report, and that, of course, is Prize Picks. You want to get in on that action. Pick more, pick less on 2 or more players, and win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. If you see it here, you see the offer on the screen. Download that app, promo code CLNS, $5 instantly when you 50 instantly when you play 5. You do not even have to win. Once again, download the app, code CLNS, play 5, get 50 instantly when you win. Super easy to use, super fun to play. Not just basketball, any sport, cross sports, doesn't matter. Pick your players, pick your stats, and have some fun playing Prize Picks. Once again, download it, code CLNS, play 5, get 50 instantly here. And again, my Prize Picks guy all season long has been Peyton Pritchard. And while I have you here, it's a rough game for Pritchard. And I'm not saying this because I want to put you on the spot here. We only ask is matchup. When you get into the playoffs, what we saw last year was shorter rotations and shorter minutes for guys who were making contributions as the season wore on. And then there was, certain things like Indiana was not a Luke Cornett series, even though he had made contributions in other series and in other games. Is Cleveland, is there any concern that I don't see this, but is there any concern that there's any players on the Celtics that would have a tough time getting minutes or being effective in a matchup with these Cleveland Cavaliers? Are you talking?
I don't think so. Minus 34 is pretty wild. When I saw that,
it's wild, yeah.
And especially because Hauser was he plus 18. So
yeah,
that's just that contrast. But I don't know. I didn't feel like I mean, obviously Pritchard had no rhythm in this game. Defensively, they are going to go out him, but not any more than another team. I didn't feel like there's something specific about this Cavs team that he struggles in. I don't know. I kind of want to rewatch this one to see exactly where, because I didn't notice him too much in this game because I feel like he wasn't the main event, but I didn't feel like I didn't come away thinking, okay, this is not a matchup that he can succeed in.
And he's had moderate success throughout the year. He had in their first matchup, 13 points, 5 of 9 shooting. He had 24 points, 24 points in the loss in that one. And then not as good. I think only 9 points the last time they played them. Yeah, earlier this in February, the win, 112-105. Only 9 points in that one, but 29 minutes. So it's not like he was unplayable or anything. This feels more like an aberration than anything.
That was my interpretation. I think the problem with Pritchard is that he kind of needs to run the show a little bit for spurts to really get in a good flow. And there was no reason for him to tonight. I felt like Jaylen and Jayson both kind of had advantages that they wanted to get to. When Tatum was sitting, Jaylen was kind of running the offense more. But yeah, that's the one tough thing that you look back at a lot of his good games, and it's like he was running the show for like a 6-minute stretch, an 8-minute stretch early on, and now he's in a good rhythm. And that's what I don't know how much of those opportunities he's going to get in the playoffs. They're not going to run things through him, and like the famous Jaylen Brown Detroit Pistons line, right?
Yeah,
we're not going to see as much of that in the playoffs, and so he has to still be effective, and he has to still be doing everything that he can do, even when he's kind of more in that conventional role player, like maybe he only gets a few shots. And that's a little bit of the challenge that he has to kind of overcome. The other thing I thought was Luke didn't look like himself to me tonight. He just looked more like Luke of old than Luke of this season. he was out. I don't think he joined them on the 2-game road trip. He was out both of those games for personal reasons. I'm not sure. I don't want to speculate, but I think he just wasn't, his head wasn't completely right in this one, or just maybe he was out of rhythm from just not being around the last few days.
He was
questionable
competing.
until an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. He was competing.
No,
he
was
got attacked a
competing.
little
I just felt
bit.
like I felt like his rhythm was just a little off, like his timing. Like almost like in a slump, but for a guy that doesn't shoot.
Yeah, and that's possible. You really needed a Luke game here without without KP. And again, I people always look for what could Joe have done differently in this game. I'll ask you. It's really tough to talk about rotations when you're already down 2 people, and you're giving Jrue Peterson first quarter minutes. So you're going to have to get creative here. What else creatively could Joe have done? Some people were upset that Pritchard wasn't getting fourth quarter minutes, but he really wasn't playing great, or they weren't great with him on the court. What else are you doing in this game? Is this a Cada game for you? Is this I think we've seen that, there is no such thing as a Tillman game. So I don't know what you're going to do there. Like there isn't. Where else are you going at this point? I don't see an answer. There's no easy answer.
Yeah, the one guy that I would have liked to see, and it's not a big deal, but I would have liked to see Torrey Craig a little, just because
and Craig was in for a flash. Yeah.
A flash, yes. And so I just was thinking, I felt bad for Sam just because he played defense literally for 35 minutes. Like he was playing on ball defense the entire night. Like I
constantly.
Right, and he held up okay at some points. I think they overall got the best of him in this one, and it's fine. And I think they'll live with it. But you brought Torrey Craig because he's a backup wing that is known for his defense. He's a veteran player. He's been there for big moments. So I would have liked to just see him in this matchup just because why not? Why not? Just it's a regular season game. You're not overly worried about the seeding. I think they're pretty much locked into number 2. I'd be surprised if they fall or go. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but I don't think they're overly worried about seeding right now. And so he's just a guy that maybe they just don't feel like he's up to speed enough on the terminology, or there's schematic things that I'm not knowing that behind the scenes he's just not there yet from an acclimation standpoint. But it felt to me like if there's going to be a game where you give him a real opportunity in a high stakes moment, this would have been it, with Jrue out, with Porzingis out, with just more minutes available, and with Sam really carrying a big load. He played like 38 minutes tonight, right? And I know that he's been dealing with this back thing on and off too. So that was the one thing I was thinking. But again, he could have gone in and he didn't look great. He didn't look great versus Detroit. So it's also possible that was enough to give Joe.
He didn't. He looked a little slow to me too. But yeah, I don't know. But what I don't get is and again, I guess I stand corrected. It wasn't first quarter minutes for Peterson. It was first quarter minute for Peterson. But I also don't understand what you're bringing in.
It was 1 minute?
A single minute, yeah.
And what went so wrong? And he got a rebound. He got an offensive rebound.
I don't know. What did you do? What could you do to either earn more time or not, or not earn any more time in a single minute? Like it's really hard. Like you could put me out there for a minute. I don't know if I could play myself off the court that quickly. Like it's a minute. I don't know what makes you go to him that early, play him a single minute and then never again. And why only play Craig 3? I don't get it. Like use him or don't. I found it odd. I'm not saying Peterson or Craig saves you tonight. I just didn't understand the choices of like putting them in for such short stints and then never again. Seems a little bit odd.
You know what else is funny is that Jrue Peterson's big opportunity that he got was also against Cleveland earlier this year. So there's something about this matchup that Joe likes. I think maybe it's his length. Maybe I don't really know, but he likes this matchup for Jrue in theory because his 2 chances that came in the first half were both against the Cavs. The last one was on the road. The one that both of them in losses. So I don't know. I was surprised that they went with him, but it didn't ultimately have much consequence. I guess down the stretch, I think finding a way to have Tatum just get a little bit more involved. I don't know that that's on Joe. I don't think that Joe's calling plays or not for Tatum. I think that's sometimes that stuff gets a little bit overrated when you're sitting at home watching. Then in reality, it's like Tatum's making reads, and he passed up a couple of opportunities where he had the ball. But I think just seeing how much he was getting, kind of had it in this game. The fact that he wasn't able to come away with a win or with just a couple of like last couple minute opportunities offensively, like that was a little bit of a disappointment. So I think that's the one thing, but I don't really know if to put that on Joe. Because I think ultimately, like at that point, it's kind of more on the guys on the floor.
Yeah, I agree there too. I just, as I said, I'm almost out of things to say about why they lost the game. I think they lost the game because Cleveland's really good, and the Celtics just didn't have the horses to hang with them tonight, with the two guys being inactive. There's definitely Porzingis being an illness. It is what it is. I mean, this kept him out 2 games ago. He was not great in the game that he played, and then sat out this one, which was disappointing because, again, they really needed and could have used him tonight. Certainly the more concerning thing here is the Holiday injury. They're saying it's day-to-day with mallet finger, which, okay, we all ran to Google to figure out exactly what that means and what it is. We saw him on the bench, Noah. It's the right hand. It's the right pinky finger, which I guess if you're going to have a finger, maybe pinky's the best, but I'm not sure.
How do you know it's the pinky finger? You could see it on the bench?
You could see the splint on it. It looked like it was his pinky.
That's good. I was trying to zoom in. I couldn't see.
That's what it looked like to me. I know for the spread of the ball here, it's not great with the pinky, but maybe for the feel of a shot or being able to catch, I think that's a little bit better. But I'm not really sure that. I know people play with it. It's a straight pain threshold thing that they're saying, but most things that you read and most doctors and most people talk about it is a type of injury that you got to splint up and rest for 8 to 12 to 16 weeks before it just gets better on its own. So it looks like he's going to kind of have to just have to learn to live with discomfort. That's going to frustrate a lot of people if Holiday's having a difficult time shooting or playing as a reduced version of himself, considering he hasn't had an outstanding offensive season to this point in the year, being, nicked up a little bit and not, not maybe performing to some people's expectations, but it also is, I don't know how long it's going to keep him out here. So we'll see, but that's definitely not what you wanted to see here. I guess there's worse injuries you could have to more important people, but your level of concern over this at this point?
Of where we are, we're still a few months away from the playoffs. That I'm not super concerned about it in the long term, but those kinds of finger injuries, they can be tricky. And I think initially when I saw it on the injury report, I literally didn't even think twice about it. I was like, okay, he hurt his finger, like he'll probably play. And then once I started reading about it, I was like, okay, this is the kind of thing that people actually like are held out for. And Lou Dort was dealing with it earlier in the season, and it really
and he's been playing.
Him. Yeah, and I'll just say, like, I broke my finger like 4 months ago, and I think I broke it. I didn't go to the doctor, but whatever I did, like, it still bothers me when I play basketball. Like, just catching the ball, it just feels like I'm missing passes or whatever. So sometimes it's not like, it's not one of those things where I think he's gonna miss games, but he's a ball handler. He's a guy who's deflecting passes. He's a shooter. So you don't want anybody to be dealing with anything. I think back to when Jaylen like cut his hand before the playoffs. Do you guys remember that? Where like he like was watering his plants or whatever.
Okay.
And I feel like that did impact him. I don't remember. I mean, I wasn't covering the team at the time, but my recollection was that it seemed
absolutely
like it was
did impact him.
Yeah.
He kept looking
you don't
at
want
it.
Those kinds of,
and he had reps on it. And he's taking it. He couldn't.
Yeah.
They cut that little foam thing. He couldn't figure out what he wanted. It was on. It was off. He was playing with it. He ripped it off. That thing was on his mind the whole time. It was really, really annoying. And that was a cut. This is something that's literally bent like this, and it doesn't straighten. So again, it's a pain threshold thing, but it's definitely not great. Definitely a little bit of annoying here, but they could have used Jrue, as you said. Hauser just got. I mean, it's what the Celtics do to teams, and what you expect people to do to you if they have the opportunity. One of the great things about the Celtics, for the most part, with their starters and certainly their top 6 players, is they all hold up defensively, and you're really not going to be able to find mismatches there. And we've seen Pritchard, who people hunt at times, has been extremely competitive defensively. So you're not super worried about that as well. Hauser's always a guy who's going to get picked on, and that's fine when he's playing second unit minutes against other bench guys. at playing 18 to 22 minutes a game. But when he's playing 30, 38, 30, 35 minutes plus with the starters, they're going to look for him. They're going to hunt him, and that's what they did all game. It's not, again, not the end of the world, but it is what it is. We talked about this earlier, but again, Mitchell, Tatum was great. Mitchell was.
I think he's one of the most underrated players in basketball right now.
Oh my God.
Truly. He's never in those conversations, and I don't even want to do the conversations thing, but he's never mentioned amongst like that class of players. And I know he's more of an offensive player than a defensive one, but in a game like that in the fourth quarter, there are very few players that I would hate to see more than Donovan Mitchell. Like I just have all the faith in the world in him that he's going to hit the big shots. Maybe he's just better against the Celtics than he is against other teams. I know his stats are a little bit below some of these other stars, but I just think he's just so underrated at this point. Like I don't know if it was just the overhype from earlier on, or I don't know. He's been such a great presence for that team, and he doesn't force it too. Like earlier on, he wasn't forcing the issue, but when they need him to take over and they need him to kind of get the hot hand, like he's almost like ready to go whenever they need him. So
he's just a shot.
In the playoffs.
He's just like all these guys. He's in that class. I mean, I don't everyone get mad at me, but like there's not a huge separation between Tatum and Donovan Mitchell or those guys.
Defense would be
defense for sure, but his defense was better last year and has been far. He was a huge knock on him in his earlier years, but yes, Tatum separates himself with the defense, and right now his playmaking is on a higher level than Mitchell's is as well as a pure scorer or just a pure baller or a guy you want the ball in his hands. There's not a lot of players that I fear more than Donovan Mitchell to go on an absolute heater late in the game. And it's just that thing where like he's defense proof. That's the crazy thing about him. We've talked about, Tatum, who was again phenomenal tonight and, showed every aspect of his game, including the defensive side, possibly one of the best all around games we've seen from him. I hate saying ever all the time when he plays well, but through 3 quarters, this is maybe the best Tatum game I've ever seen. So he did all of it. But just in terms of, we talked about Tatum, he has to work really, really, really hard to score at times. It feels like, and he was working and he was getting it going tonight. I feel like Mitchell's legitimately defense proof sometimes. It doesn't matter. He just gets there. He gets where he wants to, and then he just hits tough shots. Here he is after the game talking about the win. It's going to start any second. Come on. Lay it. Look at Bobby.
To just keep chipping away.
Yeah, I mean, everything that could have went possibly wrong went wrong. You know what I mean? And at that point, it's like, you can only go up from there. I think, they give them credit. They came out the way, and started the way they were supposed to. But for us, once we got to the end of the first, we've given up 38-point quarters before. We've been down 12 in the first quarter before. So you don't think about the 25-3. You think about the end of it, just being consistent throughout. Even when we got the lead, to still being consistent. That's the biggest challenge. It's been my challenge all year. How do you respond? And we do.
How many credit did you just the confidence that not being too high, just through what you're doing to keep the group still confident?
Hey, we're good. What's there to trip about? It's a loud environment. This is what we played for. Be down, different scenarios throughout the season. This is just one another scenario. How do we respond to it? I think coming into the game, like I said, it was like no championship being won tonight. So kind of just saying, like, look, all right, we got punched in the mouth. What are we going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, how are we going to respond? And, that's been my biggest message. You know that. Like, I said that about every game, and tonight was another example. Just a larger audience.
When you look at what the bench was able to provide, plus all down the board, right? What do you attribute all that to?
Well, I think it started with the energy. The first subs, I think it was Ty. I'm trying to remember who else was out there. I think Dre, Dean, pushing the pace, kind of get going. Ty was great vocally, and then you got Dre coming in. And then after that, like I said, at the end of the first quarter, down 12. Second quarter, figuring it out. 10-point game, we went to halftime. Starting off the third quarter, kind of shaky responding there, but the bench man was phenomenal. Then Evan Mobley, he said he was one of the best players in the world, and he showed it in that fourth quarter. The biggest thing now is just consistency. Can we do that for our 48 minutes? And, definitely proud of how we all responded.
Bringing in Bobby. Bobby, I just killed your question. I apologize there. What were you asking?
Just main takeaways from 4 games, when you look back at it collectively and what the keys are to beating Boston. And he basically said, the offensive rebounding, surviving the threes. That's obviously a big one. And then, they've able to, get Mobley going. And that was something I've talked about. We got our good friends, John, over there with Justin and Carter on the Chase Down show. I've said it to them forever. If Mobley can become a star, a superstar, that's when you start to take the Cavs seriously. And in that fourth quarter, he did it. The threes, the creation ability in transition, the offensive rebounds. I mean, that possession, John, where they got 4 shots off.
Yeah,
he
that
had
was
the
brutal.
Offensive rebound every time. And
Hold
so
on,
Donovan's
Bobby, I got to clear Bobby 1 second. Bobby's going to jump back on in 2 seconds. We're going to hear from Al Horford, and we'll get Bobby right back on here in 2 seconds.
Al, in your mind, how did the lead slip away, and how did the Cavs end up closing this game?
Yeah, I mean, I probably think that they continue to get really good shots. I felt like, defensively we let down a little bit there in the third, letting them back in, and that was part of the reason. And then in the fourth, I know Mobley hit some tough threes, from above the break, and that put him in that position, gave him some momentum.
I feel like they really hurt you guys on the offensive glass in the fourth quarter there. Was that just, do you feel like fatigue at all with you guys, or them just, kind of a bit of a scramble for loose balls there? What did you kind of see from that standpoint?
We got to make sure we're better with that. I felt like we've been solid rebounding the ball, and there in the fourth we gave up too many second chance points.
You come out of this feeling like, you're down KP, down Jrue, obviously 2 of the most important players on the team. You come out of this, obviously you're not happy with the loss, but come out of this thinking like you were right there. A couple of plays go a different way, maybe you win this game. Do you feel more encouraged by it? How do you come out of that?
I don't know. Obviously you play to win, so it's not a moral victory in any way. So. Disappointed that we weren't able to find a way to get it done tonight.
You've seen every scenario. It seems like fairly often when a team gets that huge lead early on, it can be a challenge. Maintaining it, the energy is a little different. What happens when you're up that much so fast and you have so much kind of game still to play in terms of kind of taking the big picture view?
Yeah, usually, I just feel like there's naturally, we can relax a little bit, or there's a tendency to relax. And, obviously, the other team's not going to keep playing that bad, so they're going to make some plays, they're going to make a run. They responded. I felt like we answered right back. So that's a part of the game. That's the way the game goes. But, definitely being able to, be able to try to keep those leads, as best we can.
Al, what is it about Cleveland that makes them so much?
So, Bobby, we're back. Al Horford in here getting the start in KP's absence, 5 points. He hung in there. He's competitive. I know people are beating up on Al here. The offensive rebounding is always going to get you there when you're just looking at, what they had out there and just not able to kind of hang with those guys. And you mentioned that possession right before we went to Al, where Mobley's just keeping it alive. And that was a huge part of the game there. Just the way that ended up. So yeah, it was tough. It's a tough matchup for Al there, with Cleveland with their twin towers to begin with. But again, Mobley, 5 offensive rebounds there. I don't know how many he had in the fourth. That was decisive. For what it's worth, Celtics hung in there too. They also had 14 offensive rebounds. They didn't get murdered in the rebound game. It's just kind of where it counted there in that fourth quarter, where it really reared its head. But it wasn't they didn't get destroyed on the glass. The rebounding numbers are actually pretty close to even.
Yeah, and the game was close to even, but
the game's even. Look, and again, it's you erase that start, even though it happened. Fine, you go up 22 points. I mean, it was back to 17 midway through the third quarter. So again, they're still in there. It's really kind of what happened after that, where I think just having no options outside of Tatum and Brown just really caught up with them, and then they were just trying to force it, and they couldn't generate enough buckets. You look at, the Celtics. I mean, realistically, it's their offense that fell apart there in the second quarter. 24 points in the third, 18 points in the fourth quarter. They just weren't getting as good. The shots just weren't as good, and they weren't going down.
Yeah, and they got lulled into a ton of mid-rangers in this game, and I loved it from Tatum because he took them and was aggressive and claimed them all. But that did pull away from the threes that are normally going to power the Celtics.
They only made 3 threes in the second half, Bobby. I think they made 14 in the first half. They finished with 17.
And the Cavs shot more for the game than the Celtics, which doesn't happen.
It was dead even.
Yeah, so
that's not only that, the dead even in makes and misses. 17 out of 39, both teams 43%.
Yeah, so that's a win. Cavs shoot more free throws. That's a win. The offensive rebounds, you hold that even.
But again, it's close, 19-17. This was a really close game. I think everyone's going to look at the start the Celtics had and just view it as a blown game.
Well,
and I just, I don't know.
Well, what you look at is that the Celtics dominate that early portion, and then the Cavs, outside of that stretch you mentioned there, where Celtics go back up 17, mostly dominated the rest of the game by double digits there, and won crunch time pretty decisively, I thought.
Yes.
The Celtics didn't have a chance with a minute or two left. It was already like 5, 6, 7.
And I have to agree with this. I think people don't understand modern NBA just to think that this is a big deal. 20-point lead in the first quarter it's a great cushion, and sometimes you're able to maintain it. Sometimes you'll just play a team even the rest of the way, and you'll end up winning by about that amount. But someone coming back from something like that, especially that early in the game, is not that remarkable.
Yeah, listen, we know that. We know who was out. We know the circumstances, and we know what the other games looked like. And I came into this game, John, feeling like the Celtics were going to win pretty decisively, even with those guys out. And I feel like a lot of people did. So you take that all into consideration, you put it aside, and then you just talk about what happened out there. And I think what you look at with Cleveland here is that they're going to put you in tough positions because of how much zone they play and how much double big they run. So if you're Joe, you're caught between, all right, do I match up big to big with them, which was tougher in this game without Porzingis, or do you go small to try to beat that zone? And they went with the second of those options. And it was interesting before the game. I was asking Atkinson, they like to play big. Even with Porzingis out, it feels like they're just going to go double big here. And he said, I'm expecting them to do that. And then they didn't. So, does that play into the 25-3 start? And then the Cavs start getting in other lineups. And like we said at the start of the show, John, they're just cycling guys in and out. So that's a strength of theirs. They have some lineup flexibility. They have 3-point creation ability. To be able to win that margin there is huge, and they can do it. You look at the rebounding. That's a strength too.
Yep. We'll listen in here on Jaylen Brown at the podium.
You sit with that fourth foul so early in the third.
Yeah, I think that changed the game. I got a offensive foul call on the rebound where I felt like it was just, in the paint, going for the basketball. And that kind of shifted the game for sure. It is what it is. Wish we can get it back. I don't think it was a foul. I don't think it was an offensive foul, but when these little guys flop, they're just inclined to call it.
And you guys have played each other now. Obviously, played all four games. There's always somebody out in these matchups. Do any of these games give you a sense of what you might expect if you play these guys in the playoffs, or is that just going to be something completely new considering the circumstances?
I think it was a good fight. I think they give credit to Cleveland. They played well, shot the ball incredibly well, made timely baskets, and they climbed back into the game on the road. It's tough to do, so you got to give them credit. Do I think we, had enough to win the game? I think so for sure. We'll look at it on film and get better and see where spots that we can all improve on. But regardless of who was sitting out, we should have won this game.
Jaylen, how bad was the contusion you suffered in Toronto, and did that affect you? I mean, was there a chance that you didn't play tonight?
He had 37 points, Abby.
Yeah, it was I've had worse, but it was decent enough that I couldn't go in Detroit. I didn't feel my best to start the day today, but that's a part of it. You get ready for later in the season when you don't always feel your best either. You just got to come out and do what you got to do for your team. Tonight was a night I felt like we had enough to win the game. We just came up short.
I mean, and then you and Jayson combined for 83 points, which is the most you have ever combined for. I mean, how much more can anyone really ask of you two?
I probably could have had more, in some spots where, I probably could have got a better shot or been a little bit more patient, even from myself. And same from Jayson, they don't want to help. I think they were trying to take away our spacing and our shooting. So they were just staying home on us instead of, trying to make us make the reads and pass. Right? So that means we got to dominate every time down the floor. And I feel like I let them off the hook maybe a few times where I could have used some shot fakes, some possessions I definitely would have back. But for the most part, we were aggressive, and that was key for us. But, different games, we'll see different game plans each and every night. Sometimes they blitz, sometimes they blue, sometimes, they do different things. When I had the ball or when Jayson has the ball tonight, they, for the most part, stay home. We got to make them pay.
You mentioned those things, that you said you maybe could have done better. Did you notice those shifts that the Cavs made throughout the game? Because you guys scored, a lot better in the first half and the second half. And did it feel like a playoff atmosphere from that perspective with all the little tweaks and adjustments throughout the game?
Yeah, it's a game within a game. They start the game. They started off with double big, Allen and Mobley. To finish the game, they went away from Allen and put Mobley at the 5. So that changed the game, a little bit, but allowed you to get to the basket, etc. They played in the second half. They went more Dean Wade, I guess, to try to match up physically and get some stops.
That's my guy, John.
We got to be able to recognize space to floor.
You love him.
And being able to get to what we need to get to. So in the
you didn't
game,
have a big Ty Jerome game tonight, though.
I thought that they did a good job of adjusting, and I thought we could have did a better job of adjusting to them.
And then in the fourth quarter, Donovan Mitchell was on the floor the whole time. They had 7 offensive rebounds. It felt like Donovan Mitchell was sort of, attacking certain matchups that they preferred. What can you guys do as a defense to sort of try to take them out of those spots where they're trying to get comfortable?
It's a bunch of things that we could have done. We didn't. So we'll look at it and we'll be ready. If we play them in a series, we'll have we're pretty versatile as a team.
What you can do is not have Sam Hauser out there in the fourth quarter for that many minutes. And again, they're not excuses. It's just facts. You have Holiday out there. You have Porzingis out there. It's a different story. That Cleveland has to play differently. They have to attack differently. Those offensive rebounds maybe aren't happening there. There's more of a rim presence there for Mitchell when he's going to the basket. There's just a lot of things that change tonight. So again, it's hard to gauge it. I know everybody loves narratives and national media will jump all over, the Cavs and do you feel different about either team after tonight? I don't.
I do. Yeah, I've talked about
I liked
going
Cleveland
back to
before.
Year. Yeah, and I said last
nothing
year,
about them changes my perception.
Yeah, but they can go into Boston and get a win like this against the Celtics playing well. I think that's something you take into account, because when I look at the first three games,
I thought they played really well outside of the start there, but yeah. Anyway,
and
go ahead.
When you look at the first 3 games, I thought the Celtics absolutely dominated the first one. Okoro was out. I believe every wing for them pretty much was out except for Sam Merrill in that game. So they come way back at the end. Celtics hold on, but it was a decisive Celtics win in that first game. Second game, no Brown, no White. The Celtics pretty much controlled that game all night too on the road. And then Mitchell goes nuts in the fourth quarter with 20 points and they steal it at the end. Third game was that weird sloppy one out in Cleveland, the last one where both teams really didn't have it, but the Celtics clamped down defensively, had that great start, held the Cavs to 15 in the first, and then held on the rest of the night. So going into this game, by and large, you're like, all right, when the Celtics are at their best, when they're taking this seriously, when they're locked in here on them, it's going to be tough for the Cavs to score with them. It's going to be tough for the Cavs to defend them, especially the barrage of threes. And that was something Matt Moore really keyed in on in this matchup, is that the Cavs were the best team in the league outside of Boston at preventing opposing threes. But when they played Boston, they just gave up droves and droves of threes. So when you look at tonight, this is the first time they limited the threes, John. They figured it out. I don't know if it was Hunter being in the mix. I don't know if it was them finally having that array of wings, and that's what they're going to do. They have like 6-7 wings, and they're just going to cycle them all in and out, shake up lineup, shake up defensive looks like Brown talked about there, and just try to keep the Celtics off balance. And as great as Brown and Tatum were in this one, and I thought Tatum was out of this world. I thought he was just so great in this one. They did keep them off balance, and they made them take unfamiliar shots. They took away the paint. They took away the three, and they made those guys beat them in between, and they did. But like Brown talked about there, they weren't able to get other guys involved. And so what was it?
Yeah.
How many points did they combine for? A record, Abby said there?
83. I got to say, what more could they do was the question.
But
what more could you guys have done?
Literally no one else scored. 16 for White, 5 for Horford, 6 for Hauser, 6 for Pritchard. Damn, Pritchard was a minus 36.
I know.
Holy crap.
I'll say this. I loved the Jayson Tatum midi game today. I loved it because
that's what
because
the Cavs
it wasn't
want, right?
I know, but it wasn't it wasn't midi like a 20-foot midi, like what we call like middies. He was getting to spots, getting separation, rising up and hitting 10, 8, 10, 12 footers. I love that. That to me is that last thing Tatum has to clear, which is okay, you're packing the paint and you're going to do this. And if I can get into the paint there, and I know that there's people waiting for me under the basket, I'm just going to stop, jab step, rise up and hit this little friggin' 10-footer right here that you've given me. Thank you so much. I love that shot. I love that in your shot profile. You're not saying you want it all the time, and you're right. They did a better job limiting their threes there in the second half for sure. They did an excellent job. But that, to me, is that thing, if you can unlock on Tatum. The last thing, which is shocking that he's not – I can't believe it isn't the thing he's great at. He struggles with it. Statistically, it just hasn't been a great shot for him. He starts knocking that down, man. Forget about it. I love it. And look, Bobby, Noah said it earlier. You can look at this a couple different ways. I'm encouraged knowing that Tatum and Brown have this in their bag when they need it to be able to get there. I like seeing Tatum look unstoppable because when you have that and everything else going for you, good luck, right?
Yeah.
What's frustrating is when Celtics are playing relatively well and you've got those 6 of 18 Tatum games because he's searching for it and can't find it and forcing the issue. This didn't feel like that at all. It was just aggressive offensive approach. I'm going where I want to go. Do your best to stop me. I don't think you can. I loved it. It's so different than so many of these other games where he's putting up a lot of shots. I loved his approach, and he had to do it tonight because nobody else was scoring. But the way he went about it, this is as aggressive as I've seen him. And Noah said earlier, the Celtics are not at their best when it becomes a Tatum and Brown show. No question about it. No question. But tonight they kind of had to be, and it's fine. So I like knowing that it's there because that's just another thing that makes them impossible. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I liked that. I liked that aspect. It was the way he went about it. He was fired up all game long. He was pissed. He was mad at the refs, but he didn't sulk. He's like, give me the ball and I'm going to take it. I'm going to ram it down your throat again.
There's that one great play. Yeah. Where he goes through, I think Jerome's kind of,
he got fouled 11 times one time on the way to the basket and scored again.
And that was the one. Yeah. I think it was Jerome on him. Just hitting him again and again. Tatum's getting angrier and angrier, tears through him, and then finished at the basket through Hunter and gave him this nice bump after. And it wasn't that scuffle against Atlanta, but it was an intense moment where he's not going at the ref. He's going at Hunter there, giving a little bump in the flex. So that was a great play out of this game. And, there's so many highs and lows from this game. And I think you look at both teams and they're both probably coming away with 3 things that they feel really good about. And then 3 things where they're like, and for the Celtics, Hunter or not, it's still not an array of wings that can slow Tatum or even Brown here one-on-one. I mean, those guys were able to get there, like you said, John. So that's a positive you take away from this game. That you can be in such control early and still be in position to win late after a massive comeback without Porzingis, without Holiday. I think that's a positive that you take away for Boston here. And I think the fact that you forced the Cavs to play in some, I'd say, uncomfortable lineups for them, like the fact that they have to go smaller late, that this continues to be an inefficient, difficult matchup for Garland, and they're probably going to be asking game in and game out with both he and Allen, do you take one of those guys off the floor, one of your core key guys in crunch time? You don't have to do that if you're Boston. Like, you are in some lineup binds, but I feel like the Cavs are in worse lineup binds than you. So those are the 3 things I think that you take away as positives from this one for Boston. The negatives, I mentioned one already. I got to look at the other games, but it doesn't feel like a Pritchard matchup.
I looked. 24 in one game, 16 or something in another, 9 in the last, all playing consecutive minutes. So this is the first one where you would question it. Every other was within the range, well within the range of normal for Pritchard.
Yeah. So you need him, I think. He's not that he needs to be like that 28-point version of himself, but you needed way more than what he gave you tonight. So that's something to watch for. And the results you talk about there, I don't think say definitively either way, but it is a matchup that could cause them some problems. It is a team that can switch you, which that's dangerous, John, because we've debated it. Do you stay home on the other guys and play Tatum and Brown straight up with switches, or do you help and get in rotation and that sort of thing? And I think what we see more often than not is that you want to play straight up, that you want to lock down the other guys, and they did that tonight.
Ignited our offense.
Let's hear from Tatum a little bit here.
We did a really good job of what we were trying to do and the actions and the space and who we were trying to attack. And guys on both ends tonight, we're making shots. I think in the second half, they made a run in that third quarter with getting some offensive rebounds. They took more shots than we did. So that, just kind of gave them some life. And, in the moments that we needed to get a stop, we didn't. It was tough.
And considering that in none of these 4 games that you guys have played each other have included like everybody, right? Tonight, you guys are missing 2 very important guys. What can you take from these games into a potential playoff matchup?
2 really good teams with well coached, deep roster, know how to play. Matchups have been really fun and high level. And as a fan, you enjoy watching it. As a competitor, you enjoy being a part of those. Whatever happens down the line, if we see them again, certainly to be more of the same high-level basketball.
Jayson, as the game went on, it felt like they were changing their coverages to take away some of the mismatches you were trying to attack in that first half. They went to some lineups with no bigs on the floor. They switched off the ball to keep those away. What's the challenge of balancing, trying to stay aggressive after such a hot first half?
Yeah, I think, being on such a really good team that there might be 2 or 3 call for something different, or 5 possessions in a row might call for the same exact thing. It's just all about making the right read over and over and over again.
And then Donovan Mitchell played the entire fourth quarter. It felt like he was intentionally trying to get, some of the, matchups that he wanted. How do you guys as a team sort of adjust as, maybe that works for him and he gets rolling and other guys gets rolling? How do you adjust and sort of make him more uncomfortable in that spot?
It's just a collective effort. The NBA is tough. The guys are extremely talented. They make shots. You just don't want to give them the same coverage the entire night, switch things up, pick up the ball pressure, making sure guys know that they have help, throw different looks at them. Just try to make things tough.
Jayson, what was your impression of them with Hunter? It's the first time you've seen him with Hunter.
Good, I guess.
And is it good to face a team? They want what you have. I mean, they're chasing you. Is it good to face them and to get some information for what might happen in the next couple of months? I mean, is it good to kind of experience this?
Experience like playing them?
Just playing them at this point, and the fourth time, and then they were whole. You guys weren't, but they were whole.
I mean, shit, I guess. It's part of the schedule. We got to play everybody 2, 3, 4 times. Regular season games are fun, especially a matchup like tonight. I know everybody was probably tuned in to see. And we move on. We get ready for Sunday.
You and Jaylen combined for 83 points tonight. That's the most you guys have ever combined for together. I mean, I guess what was your mindset coming in, and how much more can the team really even ask of you guys?
I think just both came out very intentional. Some each shots.
I'm taking JT off. We can't ask
How much
any
more
more.
can we ask?
Can't ask for any more out of him right now. Here's another. You want to throw another little positive in here, Bobby? With this loss here, and again, this was already kind of a foregone conclusion. It's so interesting how the Celtics did this last year. Would you have ever thought that the 1 seed would be locked up this early and it would be Cleveland? That just runs away with it. And again, this is it's insane. You're actually in a pretty interesting position here because everyone knows the key to the Celtics here is health. You want to enter the playoffs with your entire team, and then you feel good that you're going back to the finals, or you've got as good a chance as anybody, if not better. And this pretty much, feels like this is going to take the 1 seed almost entirely out of play here. It was already a remote possibility, but you're really up against it here. 8 games in the loss column, which is fine. I love it. Load manage it. Let the Holiday's finger friggin' straighten itself out. Figure out what's gonna happen there.
I had a great phone call with a friend earlier who I was talking about the Jrue finger injury. And Noah's giving me a lot of crap for just going on first name basis with a lot of guys. So I'm on the phone with this guy for the whole time, and I'm like, oh, he might miss some time. And this guy thought I was talking about Drew Carter. He's like, he only has to talk. He only has to talk. What matters about his finger there? That's going to be interesting to watch. Did you talk about that at all?
Noah and I talked about it a little. I was just gauging her. Kind of fear level. I mean, concern level there. Mine is I'm annoyed more than concerned because I think it's just going to be something that's going to bother him for the rest of the year, which means you might have to deal with a slightly reduced version of him.
Yeah, and there's no need to fight through it in the near term here. And I think, surgery versus just rest and splint and recovery is probably pretty cut and dry. Like it's, the tendon damage or whatever it is there that determines surgery. And I know some of the Twitter doctors are saying it'd be like a couple weeks of the surgery. So that's a tough decision if you're him, because he probably just wants to splint it up, shoot 4 times a game, and just go out there and battle. But you don't want to re-injure it. You don't want to aggravate it. You don't want to continue to wear yourself down if you're him. And the story of the year for him, John, has just been him looking tired, banged up, and a little less effective than last year overall. And he's still so important to you. You saw where you missed him tonight. Playoff time, you're going to get a different version of him. So why not just let him rest? And I asked him this year, John. I was like, why don't you just sit out as long as you need to get back to 100%? And both he and Derek told me at one point, like, you can't, like, you're not going to get to 100% unless, like, you sit out forever. So, but you can sit out some amount of time and maybe get a little bit of better. So I don't think anyone would have a problem with him taking his time here. And of course, we got no real clarity from Joe on the subject there, but this did feel like some quietly important news down the stretch here, because I think it's going to be really hard for them to decide, all right, split it up, go out there and fight through it, or take a seat and take it easy and just manage it.
That's the thing, is like, it feels like it's a pain threshold thing, and it feels like in order
That's
for
what
it to
Joe did say, yeah.
In order for it to be right, it's going to have to be 8-10 weeks. You're just not going to sit somebody that long.
Right.
So he's just going to wait till the
Did you see what
pain.
finger it was? I couldn't get a look at it.
It looked like pinky to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
I thought
so that's a positive, because you said Lou Dortz played through the pinky one himself, right?
But it's bothered him.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the one you can play through most comfortably, if that's the word you want to use. So I don't know, it's something to watch. It's not a huge deal. It's not the worst injury you can imagine in the world, but it's disruptive. It's on the shooting hand, and he's had a tough shooting season for stretches here. So
it was a splint on the right pinky finger, and that's what it was. So again, who knows how long it would need? Like, here's the thing, Bobby, we don't know. If we found out, hey, 4 weeks and you're fine, every Celtics fan would be like, yeah, Jesus, sit him out for 4 weeks, like that's fine. But if it's it's going to be 8 weeks and it's still going to be crap, then you're better playing and learning how to play with it, as opposed to resting and then splinting it up and then having to deal with that. Bobby, I'm concerned.
Do we want Noah back on?
We love Noah. Yeah.
All right.
If Noah want to find a spot, we bring Noah back on. We'll talk about a couple other things, put a bow on it here, but also a couple other NBA related items, including what? No, you're not going to two-shot this, are you?
Nope. Just passing the computer.
Okay. Okay. He's not going to just snuggle up there on the one laptop. Okay.
No.
Yeah, I want to get into Embiid a little bit there too. But yeah, we'll bring Noah back on before we wrap it.
I mean,
so you don't
see
know
what the outlook looks like here. It doesn't sound as bad as I feared it might be if it is the pinky there, because I think you can get through that finger. Just for ranking fingers, John, where does that fall? 5th?
I don't know. I'm trying to think about I swear I'm gonna, after this, I'm gonna go when I take my daughter to basketball practice tomorrow. I'm gonna like
splint
tape
up every finger.
I'm gonna splint up every finger and catch the ball and see which one bugs me the most.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because I'm trying to think, because the pinky for the spread, and being able to have your hand wide, and then the control of the ball. I'm thinking with dribbling versus shot. But again, here too, I'm just trying to going through all of the motions here. Like, which one's going to bug you? I'm not really sure. I'm really not sure which one it is. It seems like it's the least important one. Yeah.
What is up with this injury list he's gone through? That you got like a stinger last year and mallet finger, which I've never heard of before, and just all kinds of weird.
People are making shit up. Yeah, mallet finger. Give me a break. It doesn't sound real.
They are coming up with more complex words to describe these injuries every year.
Yeah, growing up, there was no such thing as a subluxation. Like, nothing got subluxed. Tendinopathy is such a made-up word. These are ridiculous things. They're ridiculous.
Yeah.
None of that stuff. You didn't sublux things. You've separated it.
And Kristap's been sick for.
Also, you know what else you didn't have? Nobody had a GI bug either. You just had a stomach virus. Yeah.
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing here? Everything got so complicated.
the Heat made sure to let us know stomach illness for all those guys who caught it like in that week.
I've got a GI thing. Oh, it's just nonsense, made up words.
Yeah,
made up
and
nonsense.
again, listen, can we just talk about the game? Like, listen, everyone knows guys were out. Everyone knows the circumstances here. Everyone knows the stakes and that nothing was won tonight. But this is a very worthy opponent. I think anyone can admit that. I think it'd be a difficult postseason series. It already was last year. And John, who never gives up much ground to opponents or narratives or whatever it might be, has made it clear several times this year that you didn't see Cleveland last year. Allen missing the whole series, Mitchell missing large portions of it. You know, when I start to think of dynamics that might impact the series, and one we haven't hit on here tonight, I don't care if you're up like 35, John. If there's time left, Mitchell's going to come down the floor and hit a ton of shots in droves, create them off the dribble, and cut some amount of that lead and put you at risk of blowing a lead there. And it feels like any game he's in and healthy, you're constantly going to be asking, all right, does Mitchell have a run in him? And that's a different dynamic than a lot of the series you'd be in, where you can probably control a guy and minimize his impact. And you can do that with him to some degree, but you just always know that run's coming. So that's another dynamic to the series where it's like no lead's going to be safe as long as Mitchell's out there because he's a one-man run.
Noah's back. 7-game series. Noah, who wins?
Celtics.
In
6.
Love it.
On the road.
On the road.
That's where I'm
Bobby?
at too.
Or no, is that home? That's home, actually. Sorry.
That'd be home.
That'd be home.
All being equal, I take Boston. But like I said off the top, as this matchup's shown so far, a couple injuries in either direction or even one could swing this pretty drastically. Like the Cavs need all their wings there. They can't be missing any of those guys, I think. And the
We
Celtics,
got some Cleveland fans in the chat. I love it.
the Celtics' depth, I think, became a question here. You know, again, we talked about it after the Detroit game. We talked about it after the Toronto game. They're looking a little thinner with each passing game here. And you're just not seeing reliable productivity past, let's say, the 8th spot in their rotation. So you're missing 2 guys in this game. You're not seeing anybody make up for it here. And when you lose Pritchard's productivity, your bench impact's all but gone.
Your margin for error is not what it was last year. You remember last year, every round, I was like, they don't need Porzingis. They have such an advantage over all
You
these
need
opponents.
Porzingis now.
I don't feel that way anymore. I think you do need to be at full strength. And the reality is that like, when you look back at the Cavs of last year, as Joe Mazzulla loves to remind us, they were not healthy. And a lot of these teams weren't healthy. And in that same vein, like something could go wrong with the Celtics players too. Obviously, nobody wants to see that, but I don't think they can afford to be down 1 or 2 key players the way
They
that I
can't
did
be
feel like
down.
they could be
They can't
last
suffer
year. And I say
multiple
Porzingis
mallet
because he's the
fingers.
most injury prone, but it could be somebody else too. And so their margin of error is definitely slimmer, just considering how much more competitive other teams have gotten. And you're right, like we're not seeing an 8, a 9, or a 10 guy in the rotation. Somebody, I don't think anybody's really going to be playing playoff minutes minus Peyton and Luke, and even Luke's a question mark. I mean, we haven't really seen him in a playoff environment. I would expect him to have a role for this team in the playoffs, but
I feel good about Luke.
You feel good about him?
I have greater concerns about Hauser, and I have all year.
Yeah,
Like, you just don't know what you're
it was
getting.
interesting.
On
A lot.
any
I feel
night.
like a lot of post game was about Hauser, without his name coming up, but it was a lot about just the fact that they let that.
Tell Jack to
continue
lay
happen.
off there.
What do you mean?
Jack was just
Jack was
hammering
going after
away
Sam.
on the switches and the and this and that, and
I thought it was a valid question.
oh, it's a totally valid question. It was a huge part of the game. But I listened to every press conference. So yeah, exactly. But it was clearly about Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally valid
No,
question. It's I think a big part of the game. I think a lot of people in the chat picking up on it as well.
Yeah, and I wonder, should you have gone small in this game, Noah, or do you think they should have gone big like they normally would?
Can't double big this game with what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Kata Cornett?
Could have played
I
Kata.
didn't want to see.
I like
I
Kata.
don't see it.
Am I the only one who likes Kata anymore?
No, I like Kata. It's just he looks it looks like Joe broke him by not playing him, so I'm a little worried.
And that's tough.
I will say, I do think the Jaylen getting benched in the third quarter, like he still played 34 minutes, but and I know that's not the story of this game, but that was a huge bummer for the Celtics because that really took some of the momentum away from them. Just looking down the list though, Sam played 38 minutes, Tatum played 41, D. White played 41, Al played 38. Like they really went with a 7-man rotation, and Luke just played 19. So it is kind of, yeah, they put it all out there. The only thing they didn't do is they allowed the Sam Hauser mismatch. And I think Joe said post game, Sam's been a good defender in the league these past few years. I don't think in a playoff game they would have allowed. I mean, I know they would not have allowed that to continue on and on in a playoff game. So even if they were missing those same guys, I don't think they would have allowed him to get that same look down the stretch consistently. That's like the one thing that lingers from this game that I think would be different in a playoff environment.
And that's
at least I think
that's the tough part. I agree with Jack. I've been sounding that alarm all year, Noah. He was a swing factor in those finals. Like if you don't get that Hauser or it goes in the other direction and you can't play him, those finals could have gone differently. And I know that sounds like I'm overstating it, but he throttled them on offense, hit all those threes, and then defensively you could line him up with Luka, defend him, and stay home elsewhere. And that was like almost the whole ball game for them. The fact that you could get what you got out of him offensively and then survive defensively with him out there. And now that in certain parts of the season, you've reached the point where you don't even know if he's going to be able to go because of the back. And then if he does go, it's like, all right, can he play 38 minutes or is he going to play like 9 to 12? And then the productivity's just been all over the place. And I'm not killing him for it. He's been hurt. Like it's not on him. What's on them is that they haven't been able to develop any contingency plans for if he can't go or if he's not effective in a game like this. So you said, Noah, they wouldn't allow that to happen in a playoff spot. What would you do instead?
I mean, I guess if you're saying with no Jrue, no Porzingis.
Even if those guys are there, you have to play him some. I mean, yeah, if you're healthy, you're probably going to be fine because you can minimize his minutes, right?
I mean, Sam Hauser was guarding Darius Garland the whole first half, right? Like I think they were comfortable with that. And in fact, Jack and I were speculating that they were actually wanting Darius Garland to try to be the guy. And he finished his 9 of 23 from the field. In a way, it's the same way that we know teams hunt Sam Hauser. If you want to, maybe they wanted Darius Garland to hunt Sam Hauser because they actually would rather him be the guy. Yeah, and it was working for a while, and he's 9 of 23. Donovan Mitchell finishes 13 of 26. But I mean, it's not, the reality is that Donovan Mitchell scores over everybody, and I think Tatum said it post-game.
Everybody, but yeah,
we were having the same conversation last year about Al Horford. So look at him, he keeps cooking Al Horford. What are they going to do? And so you almost have to just accept the fact that he's gonna do that. But yeah, he's not going to play 38 minutes, and he's not going to have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell all night when the
allowing
people.
Allowing people to hunt him is what got him the #1 defensive rating 2 years ago, right? Because everybody was taking themselves out of rhythm trying to hunt the matchup, and he was holding up okay. And it really messes with your offense when you do that. So it's not a terrible strategy there to do it. It's just the amount of time you can get away.
Defense.
Yeah, you can get away with it for so long, but yeah, when it's happening over and over and over again at a critical stage in the game, and you don't have another option, it becomes a little bit more glaring there. So Noah said maybe they wouldn't have allowed it. I wonder, and again, I think if you're going to be critical of Joe in a couple of different spots here, I would say the two things I might question is I might have just rolled the dice and not sat Jaylen even after he picked up that fourth. Would be one, and number two would have been some Torrey Craig minutes there in that fourth quarter over Hauser, just simply defensively to hold up, see if he could hold up a little bit better. I don't think he's necessarily an answer, but when you're short and that's where you were struggling there, that's what I might have opted for because at that point you weren't getting any offense out of those guys either. So I might have taken that shot too, but nitpicky.
127 of Peterson, 3 minutes of Craig.
Yep.
That was a wild minute for Peterson.
Yeah.
The foul thing, this is a mentality. I have certain things that I realize are not opinions about Joe or about the Celtics, but just widespread basketball beliefs. I pretty much don't think you should pull your star player in an important game because they have a couple fouls, unless there's somebody that consistently fouls out. Jaylen Brown finishes with 4 fouls in this one. So it's like, in hindsight, he didn't need it. I understand that in the reverse scenario, he fouls out and it's like, what were you thinking? Why didn't you
And
sit
then you
him?
go
But
bigger there,
generally
and that wasn't
speaking,
your plan in this
generally
game.
speaking, the whole like, oh, he has 2 fouls in the first quarter, sit him because that's considered foul trouble. Like, I never subscribe to that. Again, I can totally see how it can come back to bite you, and then you're looking
Me
like an
neither.
idiot for.
You're playing a what if
I always
scenario.
think this, though. I'm
I'm
always
with
like,
you.
just trust them. Like, these are smart guys, and Jalen's not gonna foul again. Like, whatever, or maybe he will, and then he won't be able to play down the stretch. But not to play him in those minutes. This isn't a Joe thing. This is how basketball coaches operate. It's like a rule. Once you have 4 fouls in the third, you're sitting. 2 fouls in the first.
But
you're
it's
sitting.
not a guy. Here's why you can do
it.
No, I agree. Here's why you can do it with a guy like Jaylen is no one's gonna hunt like when like a guy, you've seen it with like they play Golden State and Curry gets some fouls and they're like, oh good, if it's because they'll hunt him and then he's not going to be able to defend and he has to foul to remain competitive. That's not going to happen to Jaylen. He's not going to get hunted on defense where he's not going to be able to hold up against somebody who he has to foul to keep them from scoring. And he's not a big where he's going to find himself down low with a choice of like, do I go up and try to contest this shot or not? He's just got to be smart. So you can trust players like that. It depends who you are. With a big, I'm a little bit more skeptical because when you know that the guy can't go up and contest shots, it's so easy to get up and over bigs. They're almost useless when they're worried about getting fouls because they can't be competitive defensively. Or someone that's going to be hunted time and time again, and they're going to be put to the test there. But Brown's a guy you can get away with it there. So I agree with that philosophy.
Yeah, and if your game plan is to go small, if it's to spread them out and prevent them from going zone, you don't want to go Horford Cornet there, and that's what they did. So your alternate options in that spot, when you see you don't have the depth pieces early and you're not going to go back to those guys in the second half, and you don't want to play double big in this game, it doesn't make sense to bring Jaylen out. And maybe he fouls his 5th in short order and you lose him for the rest of the game at that point, or a significant portion of the game at that point. But since it's 4, like you said, Noah, there's some room for error there. And
I might have played Tatum the whole 4th also.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. Tatum already played
you've
41
just been
minutes.
killing him with minutes.
And it's 3 games of 20,
I know.
and it's February, and the seating's kind of out of rhythm. And this is not a solution, but I hate that he sits at the beginning of the fourth quarters, especially when he has it going.
In a close game.
Yeah, I feel the opposite.
There's not like. That's the thing. I know, and I understand. Like, I don't have.
I'd go the other way.
What I want
I'm
him
with
to say,
Noah.
but every time the fourth quarter starts, I'm like, this sucks that he's not playing right now.
I know
These are
where.
such important minutes.
Jalen's got to get him through it, though.
I would sit him the last 2 minutes of the third, 2 to 3 minutes of the third there. And if you have the luxury of another short rest to start the fourth, maybe, but in a tight game where you're like, nope, we're just going to ride it, I would go. So
we're classic like podcast coaches right now. Like, I know when he should be sitting.
It doesn't
on like first few minutes of the fourth. I feel the same way as you, though. I would much rather see that. I hate the way
it feels icky. You're starting a
feels
fourth
right.
quarter.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and I'm like, I hate that he's not out there.
Yeah, I
like,
completely agree.
Because it sets a tone for the whole thing. It's really rough. But you're right. Bobby's right. I mean, everyone's right. Joe's probably right. He plays 44 minutes. He's got to sit somewhere. So that's why I don't get into the rotations and the this and the that so much, because Noah just went through all of the minutes. They played guys heavy minutes here, and you just weren't getting anything out of anybody, and you're down 2 starters. There weren't a lot of solutions. Guys, putting a bow on this one, I want to touch on 2 other things before we wrap it up. Nothing?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, very quickly, your thoughts on the bombshell report, which nobody was super surprised with, but Joel Embiid, 76ers shutting down Embiid for the remainder of the season. They have a top 6 protected draft pick, so they desperately got to find their way to get themselves into that top 6 right now to justify this move. But what a nightmare season for Noah's darlings out of Philadelphia. The team.
I don't like them. I just thought that they were going to be good. Maybe it was the fear of the 76ers that got me.
Yeah.
No one knew that he was coming to camp with an injury.
To be clear. My darlings are like the Knicks. I like the Knicks.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But you picked the Sixers. Yeah. That's okay. No one could have foreseen all of the calamity that would befall them.
Noah said she's done with predictions now. We
No, I'm done with
beat up
elite
on her too much.
predictions. I'm not an expert in all of the other NBA teams. I will predict things about the Celtics. I'm not predicting things about like who's going to come out of the West. I don't know. You guys can guess.
What else won't you do?
No blame
A lot
pie.
of things, but
No, we're not going to play Blame Pie. I just wanted to hear the music. I wanted to see Noah's expression. What else won't you do? Blame pie. I don't like the blame pie.
Come on, you should have known the answer.
No.
I saw two up there. I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you say?
Nothing.
If
Nothing.
He was
but
healthy
it's less about
and
this
himself.
Yeah.
They're a whole different team, and the George thing blew up too. So they're probably screwed because what's he gonna do? Cartilage repair and sit out until this point next year, or maybe miss all of next year. They're screwed.
Yeah,
they're completely.
The good
screwed.
news is Paul George can podcast again, because there's really nothing. Well, there's just you don't have to really worry about the rest of the season.
And it sucks.
He can put his focus.
I saw after the game, John, and I didn't realize they still had a relationship, but Horford consoled him, and that was his second to last game this year. I think he played one more after that one, but that was the night where you could tell it's probably over for them, and you worry about his career at this point. And they're probably going to have to go to some drastic measures, as the reports have said, Noah, to try to get him back out there. But it's tough. I mean, I know Celtics fans hate him, and he's been a villain all these years and all that, and I understand it. But he was a worthy foe. I mean, at his height in that 2023 year, they had you 3-2. Like, you were on the brink of losing to these guys, and he was just playing at such a high level. And to see him fall to this low, again, like, I don't know if he and Horford are best friends, but you could see Horford really saying some, like, pick up stuff to him there, try to pick him up. I don't know what he was saying specifically, but it is a little sad because you don't know where it's going to go from here for him. And you can tell he's tried to fight through it, and it just isn't working.
That's the thing. One, I don't understand how the guy who had meniscus surgery and rushed back to try to help out a team that was probably doomed anyway, and then played in the Olympics. It feels like Embiid himself mismanaged his own body and his own injury by deciding to do these things. And again, hats off to someone who wants to return and wants to try and help there, and then wants to go out and play in the Olympics. Like, these are good and noble things, but also just not smart considering, who he is and his injury history, and he's battling something and he's trying to get back. So not great. The most ominous part of the entire statement to me is that they don't actually even have a plan. They're just like, he's going to stop playing, and then we got to figure out. I mean, the strangest thing to me is we're either going to replace his meniscus or like shatter his hip to realign things. Like, are you kidding? It's like this big hunk of metal that's uneven. You're just going to hammer on one side to see if you balance it out somewhere else. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I forget this year and forget like the, everything that happened to the Sixers and their season falling apart. This could, hyperbole aside, could be the last we see or we've ever seen of Embiid as we know him, in terms of what he's able to look like if and when he comes back. And you could be talking about a year from now before you see him. I mean, depending on how things go, it's insane.
And think of how it went for Lonzo Ball.
I think the tough thing. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, first of all, he never really was healthy. Besides with that MVP season, in the playoffs, we never really saw him have a healthy playoffs. Even that 2023 series where like they were up 3-2, he wasn't himself during that series. He really wasn't. And so it's just he's actually a huge what if, because we might have never actually seen what he's like at his best in the postseason. There was just that MVP year where that never translated into the playoffs. And the other thing is I'm not a medical expert, but doesn't it feel like these meniscus injuries end up being almost more complicated long term than like the much more scary in the moment ACL tears? Like,
this is John's thesis. This is John's thesis.
I talk about this all the time. Like, it really feels like those.
Would you rather have a torn ACL
Oh my God, I talk about this
Or
to my dad all the time. I really think this is
Noah,
like a.
this is my most controversial take that I was 100% right on. But in the early days of Kemba, I went on the Garden Report and I was like, guys,
it'd be better
this
if he
is
tore his
bad.
ACL.
I was like, this is a terrible injury.
Yes.
It's degenerative, bone on bone. I was like, he'd be much better with a clean ACL tear. And everyone killed me for it. And they're like, John wanted Kemba to tear his ACL. And I was like, no.
No, I agree with you. I need. Can we bring a doctor on to talk about this?
Yeah, we should.
Because think about how many people later on have knee issues. It was never they tore their ACL and then 2 years later they're still doing more surgeries. Like those guys, they recover eventually. They have a year that they miss. Maybe they're a little bit less athletic, but the meniscus guys it just lingers. It's scary.
No, and Rose there too, because he had the ACL and the meniscus after, and it felt like the meniscus was more prohibitive for him long term. And the problem is too, so many guys rush back from it, and that's what Embiid did here, John. And Rob took that route a couple years ago, and you can just rattle off all the guys who took the short-term treatment there instead of the longer-term, more stabilizing treatment. So, yeah, that one's dangerous. You never like to hear that one, and we all remember where we were a couple of years ago when Rob suffered that, and you were like, uh-oh. And what happened to him there has happened to a lot of guys at this point, including Embiid. And Embiid's had so many different things too that it all probably added up into just massive, massive issues for him. And so you wish him the best. Maybe I'm alone in that. I want to see everybody healthy and competing at the highest level and available.
You're the only person.
Yeah, I'm not dancing on anyone's.
I don't either, even though he's not super likable. But again, he's trying, and it's frustrating, and it sucks. And this is a guy who almost didn't play a game in the NBA because of his injuries here, and so it's been a battle for him the whole time. Look, detractors will say, "Hey, maybe get in better shape," but it's difficult. I mean, he's a huge dude, 7'2", and he takes a pounding, and those guys, they don't last forever. It's really, really difficult on their bodies to be that big and that heavy, and he moves around a lot. And it's tough, but they're toast. As bad as the Embiid situation is here, the Paul George situation might be even worse. He looks completely cooked. This is a team that I don't know how they get out of this at this point. But just when you thought it was going to be like Sixers
Cooper
kind
Flag.
of rising up to challenge. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I don't think Flag's I don't think he's a franchise saver. I mean, he's certainly, I think, going to be an outstanding player, but I don't know what happens here, but yeah, certainly
it is funny
being
though.
able to protect that pick is going to be huge for them. Yeah.
The Al Horford trades, why that pick's potentially going to the Thunder.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to talk about, because this was a big story in and around NBA circles, the whole face of the league situation. We talked about it with Jayson Tatum. Yes. I'm doing
This is the third game in a row, John.
No, stop it, Bobby. I'm not doing that. I'm doing this. Okay. We didn't even talk about it last game, and you definitely didn't talk about it 2 games ago. Okay.
There's no way we're denying history again.
But
we've never talked about this before.
No one has. We're not having
There's new LeBron comments. There's new LeBron comments. I get it.
We're not having a face of the league conversation. We're having a NBA media conversation, which is where LeBron took it today. We're going to play the soundbite. I just want your reactions to it because this went around. And boy, did you have sad Stephen A. Smith today. I know he's talking about me, and I love the NBA. And blah. It was great theater. But here's LeBron talking about it with the whole face of the league stuff.
Unfortunate, but I don't know why do you want to be the face of a league when all the people that that cover our game and talk about our game on a day-to-day basis on everybody. I mean, have that responsibility. It's just weird. It's weird energy from the people that I don't know. But Channing, he said it. He said it perfectly. Couldn't have said it no better. But Ant said he don't want it. Obviously I didn't ask for it. But I knew there was a responsibility for me, not only to my family, my friends, my community, and whoever that was going to follow my journey throughout my career, not only in Ohio when I started there, but all over America and all over the world when I traveled all over the world. So I've always taken that seriously and understood from the beginning what being a professional was all about and being a role model was all about. So try to hold that with the utmost respect and honor. And but I feel I understand. I completely understand. This is weird energy when it comes to that.
So that's the quote. I have my thoughts, but I'm curious yours first.
It is weird that no one wants to embrace it. Like that was the main or one of the biggest takeaways I had from All-Star. Noah, among all the quotes we heard out there, was Ant saying, "Nope, I don't want it. That's Wemby." Because you think there'd be a pride attached to it or a competitiveness. And, we were talking about it this morning, Noah. I like it because I feel like it's hand in hand with who's the best player. And that's the whole ball game for me, like debates about who's the best, who's going to define this generation, all that kind of stuff. But this thing's a little different. Like there's an internet component and aura and all the stupid words we tossed around this morning. And I don't think these guys are embracing that aspect of it. Like who looks the best or who sounds the best or that sort of thing. Like, these guys want to win MVPs. These guys want to win championships. These guys want to define the league in that sense. And, I don't think they're in a, measuring contest of like who's the, the face of the league in terms of like coolness and vibes and all that sort of thing. And that's certainly where Tatum, I think, he has a lot of aspirations, Noah. We've heard it, Larry Bird and becoming one of the greats and this and that. Like he doesn't shy away from that stuff, but he doesn't want to be the coolest, loudest, most boisterous personality out there. And that seems to be what we're talking about here.
I think there's a lot of overlaying issues here. The actual face of the league thing, as you know, Bobby, it's my least favorite conversation in NBA media right now. But just because I think it just happens, and then you say, oh, we don't need to talk about it. It'll just happen. But what LeBron's really getting at is the way that the game is covered, and I think in particular the national media and all of that. And I'm sure we can debate it. I think the current state of NBA media is terrible. I think the fact that Steph Curry has a masterpiece game last night, and today all we are is debating like theoretical concepts and things. Like we don't embrace the game. We don't embrace how much talented players there are. There are a lot of great stories, or a lot of great things that we could talk about. And I think that there's an understanding that people only want negativity, and maybe negativity is more profitable, but I don't think we've really given people a chance to see if they like positivity too, because there's not really a space for it on national television. Like I never watch anything, and I listen to podcasts. I read every article that comes out in the NBA. I never want to watch TV because all that stuff, the halftime show, the postgame shows, they're all awful, and that's the only option you have. And so I understand.
Noah plugs her ears when I speak. Yeah.
No, but you know what I'm saying, though. It's just that's my perspective, and I know it's been. I think more people are talking about it now, but you need to have there is an understanding, and I think I really believe strongly in the fact that there are people who will embrace the positive stuff too, and they will embrace the underdog stories. Let's have a segment on Lonzo Ball being back in the NBA. It's sport. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to feel good, and it doesn't really.
Yeah, I don't think. I think there's a lot, as you said. There's a lot of layers to this story. The face of the league stuff is it. There, you don't get to pick if you are or you aren't. You just are. It just happens. It's organic. And over my lifetime, there's been 5, it's not automatic. And there are great players who are not the face of the league, throughout David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, blah, blah, Dwayne Wade, exceptional, not a face of the league guy. You can be awesome and not be the face of the league. In my life, Magic, Bird, Jordan, maybe for a flash, Kobe, LeBron, Curry, 5 or 6 who you could say are the face of the league at any given time. That's it. That's spanning 45, 50. That's a long friggin' time to have 5 faces of the league. So it's not like a thing where oh, I'm good. I'm Jayson Tatum. I'm face. You don't get to be an Anthony Edwards. You're not. You have to be. Look at all of those names I mentioned. They're top 10 players ever. That's how good you have to be the face of the league. So the reality is nobody's actually good enough to be the face of the league right now, outside of maybe Jokic. And for whatever reasons, he's not the guy. People don't view him that way. Maybe it's because it's an international born player. That's fine. That's number one. It's not an automatic thing. Number two, it's crybaby stuff. Kes put it in the chat. You want to go to heaven, but you don't want to die. Like, look, you want stardom, you got to take criticism too. Being afraid of taking a face of the league mantle just because people are mean is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's soft stuff, and I don't care about it at all. Like, if you're going to be there, look at LeBron, for example. LeBron catches so much grief. People are constantly trying to knock him down. And it's fine. It comes with it. You're not going to be up here without people trying to knock you down. It's how life works. Grow up. Oh, Charles Barkley's mean. I don't want to. I have no patience for that. But as what Noah said, the state of NBA media is ludicrous right now. As a person who will get angry and emotional at times with certain things, I agree. Like, I am not one of these people that thinks the league's in bad shape. I think it's as good as it's ever been. And I've been watching for a very long time. I think the people who cover it are awful at it. And it's not just because everything has become this algorithmic nonsense, about like hot takes and trying to get people fired up and pissed off and not telling the Lonzo Ball stories or the other stories or better stories. But like I said, I think you have too many old heads there who don't watch enough basketball and don't celebrate the good basketball that's being played on a nightly basis. You've got guys popping off for 50 left and right. You've got amazing games, young teams with young, exciting athletes who are fun to watch that don't get national TV exposure. So yes, the NBA media, and it includes Stephen A, and it includes the guys on TNT. They're not satisfied with what they're watching on a nightly basis. And it dominates. I mean, it dominates the airwaves. So it has been bad. You got a lot of old heads on podcasts constantly playing back in my day shit. I think it's terrible. So I agree with that. I think his comment was more about NBA negativity than face of the league stuff. I just wanted to quickly give my face of the league rant there too. But this is media. LeBron's attacking the media here more than anything. And I don't think he's wrong.
And there's a responsibility that these guys have. I think people hit on in the chat that like these are the, ushers of the game into the next generation, and they all have a responsibility. And I think Tatum does his part, and fills the roles he needs to, and tries to be whether it's the shoes or whatever else that goes.
I have
into
one last point.
The kind of guy that represents the game.
I have one last point. You have to talk about. I'm sorry, I meant to put this in there. You do have to talk about some provocative things, though, too. I don't think it's all flowers and puppy dogs and sunshine. Like, I think it is boring for media to just only look for nice stuff. It's not anybody's job to hold water here, but it's strange to watch something that you're supposed to like a lot and not have some natural enthusiasm for it. That's what I find bizarre. It's like people are watching this game being played really well by so many teams and so many players, extremely high level stuff night in, night out, and choosing not to even be like appear a little excited about it. I find it so weird. The Noah, we talked about that game, the halftime of the Celtics game, when they come in there and they're just like shaking their head like, oh man, that was a lot of threes, huh? Like that's all.
Yeah. What game was that?
I forget. And then Kenny Smith goes and does the worst analysis I've
It was
ever
Minnesota.
seen in my life.
It was awful. It was awful. It was the only game I've watched TNT from, and I was in a hotel. My point, John, I just want to clarify what clarify what I said. I don't mean you can't criticize players. That's not the point. That's the point.
I wasn't
is not
going at you with it. It was
no, but I'm saying
I
don't think that's what LeBron means either. That's not what LeBron means either. I don't think that's the thing. And I don't think they're saying the face of the league doesn't want to be the face of the league because they get criticized a lot. I think it's the reality that you're not looking at the things objectively anymore. You're not telling the positive stories. We're not talking about basketball a lot of the times. And I think that there's an understanding that people don't want to hear about basketball. But at the end of the day, we haven't really given them the chance to decide if they do. All I know is I turn on football analysis and I'm like, they're actually talking about the game. They're actually talking about the players. It's not just like this one debate back and forth for 3 weeks straight. And so I think that's what they're calling for. And LeBron is the best vehicle to make that point because everything that he says is, I mean, like we have to respond to it, right? He's a massive news story. He's the impetus he sets the agenda really for sports media. But I don't know. I would give the NBA media an F as far as telling the stories of like the young
Yeah.
rising stars, and then
Not a good story. They're not telling any stories.
Yeah. And I hear this comment. People say this a lot. Football is a more complex sport than basketball, though. And again, I'm not a football person, so I believe you. But there's a lot of complexities to basketball that are literally never touched ever on TV. And so I think that you're leaving it like there's a whole language that the players use, that the coaches use, that I've learned since starting to do this job, that I think would be interesting to people if they were given the opportunity.
It's actually strange to me, Noah, because I find, generally speaking, even take away the negativity, I find the dumbed down nature of most NBA broadcasts, and that includes the home broadcast, where they actually don't talk about what's actually happening. They're just saying like, "Wow, that was great by Tatum." That's cheerleading to a ridiculous level. Like they'll be down 12 points and they're showing replays of a dunk like that from a guy who just turned it over 3 times. That's ridiculous. But on the national level, it's so dumbed down. You are missing so much of the things that they see. It's their job to.
Think of the praise Hubie Brown just got.
It's their job to
going up the door.
educate people. Yeah, like tell me what I'm seeing and why it's happening, as opposed to. And again, I hate throwing out the term because I think people use it too often to avoid stories and avoid asking tough questions, but it's narratives. So much of it is about narratives and storylines and just trying to follow them, and nothing to do with what's actually happening between the lines. Why did the Celtics go cold? Did Cleveland make adjustments? Did they go zone? Did he switch up his defense? Tell me some things about what's happening here. You don't get a lot of that at all.
It's fitting that tonight's game we have that conversation, because there are nights like this, there are games like this, and I know it's a long season. There's a lot of crap games and just teams that don't matter and blah, 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 blah. I think that all plays into this. But when you do get a moment like this, and when you do get 2 teams like this and a team people didn't expect to be here like Cleveland, you want to understand it. You want to get the story of why. You want to figure out what's happening in real time in a game like this. And this is a game like you get really excited to go back into it and watch it and figure out, what happened here and what happened there. And, those games don't always happen night in and night out, but when they do, and like Noah mentioned, like when the Curry thing happens last night, and when, that stuff's happening more often than we give credit for, across the league. And it is a media production broadcast issue I think we're talking about here. And fortunately, there are some new partners coming in next year. There's going to be some new companies overseeing this stuff. I know ESPN's going to still be in the mix there, and they're a big part of this problem. But I do think there's some hope. Reddick did what he did. I know someone said that in the chat. It's too bad he's not in that media position anymore.
Reddick was outstanding.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people.
Coach for me.
There's a lot of people trying their best, and a lot of it's on the internet certainly here too. And we try to do the best job we can and all that. So it's there for people who want it. It's just unfortunate that the biggest platforms haven't embraced that. And I think it's still going to be a little struggle, even with some new companies involved here, and even with, people pushing for this kind of change in the way we talk about the game. The negativity is still going to sell. The outrage is still going to sell. The noise is still going to sell. Like, there's a reason they do it, because
I like noise.
Depends what kind.
I know, but what I'm saying is there's a place for it, but it's just frustrating when
it's too much of the conversation.
When you feel people are either intentionally ignoring what's happening or actually don't understand it. That's what bothers me the most. Just because they want to further an agenda, or trying to do, what everyone's trying to do now, and just get a rise out of people and embrace debate, so to speak. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that because it was out there, and it was an interesting topic. We have another game coming up, of course, on Sunday against the Denver Nuggets. We will see which Celtics are back here. I'm guessing we're not going to see Jrue Holiday for a little bit, but hopefully they'll have Porzingis back here. Hopefully Jokic plays, because he did not last time. So that should be a fun game. That's Sunday, rather, not Saturday. Saturday night, Saturday 8:30, correct?
Nope, Sunday at 1.
Sunday. Oh shoot, it's the Lakers next week. I was jumping ahead in my day. Lakers next week is Saturday 8:30. Sunday at 1:00 we'll be back here with a Garden Report. Immediately after that, Bobby and Noah will be at the Garden. I'll have Jimmy Toscano in studio with me, and we will bring you the goods, guys. Any closing thoughts before we go? Celtics, of course, as you know, lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers 123-116 after opening the game on a 25-3 run. End up getting overtaken in the fourth quarter there. Legs just kind of got away from them. Great games from Tatum and Brown, but that was just about it. Noah, Bobby, anything?
No, more thoughts in a moment here with a stand-up. So
Okay, you'll get more. Follow us on CLNS Media on YouTube. Make sure you follow Noah and Bobby on Twitter so you can keep up with all of their stuff. Noah will be writing for Celtics blog, Bobby for CLNSmedia.com, and I'll be doing nothing. I'll just be hanging out waiting for Sunday. It's all I do. I can't wait. Another Celtics game, Celtics versus the Denver Nuggets. We will see you guys on Sunday. Bye.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to
Same.
feel that
Same.
way. Let's fight out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke